UGC should have had sufficient faith in its own appointed teachers. That is, teachers appointed as per the rules and regulations established by itself. The covering later with the syllabus actually does not explain why they are coming up with a full-fledged syllabus, beyond simply noting that the quality mandate of the UGC puts emphasis on curricular reforms. What exactly the curricular reforms are meant to do is not specified. In fact, last year, all the central universities received this order from the UGC saying that they need to change their curricula according to LOCF, and we did it in quick time in 2019, actually not last year, but almost 2 years ago. We had received this, and the University of Delhi, I know, did it within 4 to 5 months, which was quite a feat. In spite of that, we are yet again being given another syllabus and another syllabus to experiment with, which is sad. I think far from reflecting involvement of our opinions and ideas and experiences of the stakeholders, namely the students and teachers, in fact, the entire process through which this syllabus has come about actually throws any notion of transparency to the winds. We have absolutely no idea of who made this syllabus, who constituted the expert committee, who were the experts, under what rules of UGC were such an expert committee constituted, and what was the mandate given to them. Again, the document claims, the document on the UGC website claims that they sought and received feedback from stakeholders, but that is not at all clear to us as to what was the channel through which such feedback was sought and received. We do not know what kind of feedback was received, and the entire process appears to be extremely nebulous, to put it mildly, because if you claim that you've received feedback and nobody sees the feedback, nobody knows what was the thrust of the feedback, then you can do whatever you want to in the name of having received feedback. Let's remember that it was in 2011 that semester system was introduced. 2012 was the year in which it was also introduced in humanities and social sciences. 2014, that is exactly after 2 years, they introduced a new system called FYUP, 4-year undergraduate program. 2015 is the year in which they introduced the CBCS. 2016 is the year in which they introduced the new CBCS. Okay, 2019 is the year in which they introduced LOCF. In other words, if you count, in the last 10 years, we have had 6 different kinds of courses. This is actually reducing the students of central universities and the other universities of India to mere guinea pigs. It is equally important to point out, one, that on several occasions, almost all of the last 10 years, within a session or at any given point of time in a college, there were more than 2 types of different courses being taught by students, by teachers. Okay, now that is not healthy at all, because none of the courses that you are actually teaching gets the time to settle down where you can start seeing its pluses and minuses. You can start analyzing its advantages and disadvantages. So this is like being in a hurry, introducing, experimenting with the students' careers and not coming to anything at all. Second thing is, of the 6 different kinds of courses that were introduced and the structures of undergraduate programs which have been experimented with, none of these And I repeat, none of these have ever been officially or unofficially studied for their advantages or disadvantages. So we jump from one kind of reform to another without taking a pause, looking at what we have done, analyzing it out, finding out what the problems are with the existing structures, and then trying to address those problems with the coming of the new reforms. They have specified the learning outcome, what they call PLO, the program learning outcomes. And these program learning outcomes, it is scandalous, are kind of staggered in a manner where when you do most of the Indian history papers, all you do is learn facts. The learning outcome that the program entails specifically is tied to particular courses. So most of the Indian history papers are shown to develop only the knowledge, the factual knowledge of the student. And it's ridiculous, because Indian history is the area in which the students at the undergraduate level get to engage with the sources. That is where they learn to pick up the elementary skills of research. That is where the sharpest of analytical tools are utilized by teachers in the classroom, researchers in the books that they are prescribed, and students in the way they engage with this scholarship. If you look at the reading lists in Indian history papers, most of the books that are prescribed are actually books that were written 50 years, 60 years ago. Even those that appear to be more recent are actually books that are not written by historians, that are written by local cultural enthusiasts or well-meaning individuals wishing to celebrate their past and so on, which is fine, but they don't teach you the skills of historical thinking. They do not engage, they do not have the potential to engage students with the craft of the discipline of history. And that is sad. If you're meant to spend 3 years without learning those skills, that's not value for the time. The fact that the reading list which accompanies it has absolutely no sense of what the syllabus is talking about. No history book, for example, can refer to anything in the eternity. Okay, obviously religious scriptures do so, and rightly, because they have a different clientele and different purpose. Okay, and there are many people who can simultaneously be devoutly religious and yet be great scholars of history, because they understand what to read how. They understand that when you're reading a scripture with a view to when you're reading the scriptures as a devout religious person, you read it differently from when you're reading a text to analyze it historically, right? So these are two different approaches, and the approach that this syllabus unfortunately takes is one which is more noticeable and permissible in one's religious lives, not in one's academic life, and certainly not in the discipline of history. Reading list is actually most starkly outdated reading list. Okay, even when in the reading list you may notice 2010 or 2012 sometimes, if you go back to the author's name, you realize that those authors are long dead. Even some of the right-wing historians hardly find any place in recent right-wing historians. Let's say, for example, Meenakshi Jain does not find a mention in the syllabus. So I would say it is ill-founded and very, very shabbily researched syllabus. Here is a course which seeks to cultivate a certain sense of pride in one's history and one's past. By itself, this is not a dishonorable idea. It's a good idea. provided that cultivating a sense of pride does not mean that you stop looking at what was not right. Okay? Owning up to one's disadvantages, problems, injustices is part of feeling the pride in one's legacy. And one of the most important things that you need to do there is to engage with your past in detail. So a history which claims to cultivate a sense of nationalism, a sense of patriotism, is running away from studying its own history. When you are saying that we will have lesser number of papers on Indian history. That's one thing. The second thing is that when you say we will take pride in Indian history, you have to specify what it is that you mean by Indian history. Do you really mean everyone, every place, every community, every caste, every class? If you take pride only in Sanskrit culture and not in others, then it means that you have a very elitist, very exclusivist, and very reductionist idea, not just of history, but of India itself. Periodization that is implicit in this syllabus is actually, ironically, a periodization that was first made by the British imperialist historians. The syllabus makers, in this case, obviously seem to agree on this and many other matters with the British imperialist historians. Now, if we do not open this up for discussion, if we do not analyze the basis on which we make these ancient, medieval, and modern periods, then the students will not have learned that actually the time frames they are dealing with is not a given. They are historiographically constructed and they imply certain things. They presume certain things, and those things that they presume remain outside our analytical gaze as far as this syllabus is concerned. Far from saffronization, what it does is actually offer a very stilted kind of historiography. It does not have a coherence or integrity. If it was a thoughtfully done historiography of a certain ideological hue, then still you can engage with it, so long as it is historians. So, for example, Nilkant Shastri, A.L. Basham, R.C. Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar, these are all historians who are highly respected across different ideological hues. It is another matter that since the time that they worked, historiography has moved on, looked at other themes, and challenged some of the ideas that they have offered. Many right-wingers would be surprised to know that, for example, R.C. Majumdar was the person who invited Romila Thapar to write the new NCERT books. People today would tend to think that R.C. Majumdar was a right-winger who hated Romila Thapar. But the bottom line is that both were professional historians. This will certainly disable students from questioning the basis of periodization, because we have to understand that periodization is not simply a matter of conveniently cutting off long time periods into shorter ones. Periodization is also substantive in the sense that where you cut it from depends on what you think constitutes integral wholes of periods. What I notice here is not essentially a right-wing tilt in historiography. It's completely random. The topics in this particular paper, History of India from 1200 to 1700, you would notice that 4 of the topics are actually plain, simple, dynastic political history. Okay. Now, even political history you can teach in very interesting, exciting, and engaging ways. If you study politics, to study the way in which authority is established, to study the manner in which people are subjected to power and they give their consent to power. If you study to understand how the institutions of authority develop over a period of time and acquire the ability to strike awe and acceptance amongst its subject population, then it's worthy of a study. But if you reduce political history to a narrative of wars fought, battles won, palaces made, policies undertaken, succession wars, and so on, meaning that if you reduce political history to dynastic biographies, then it is not only boring, it is also useless in terms of any kind of learning that the students may pick up. The other two topics that you're left with then is actually only in terms of what they notionally call socio-economic history, but which they reduce to Hindu and Muslim histories. Okay, so it is based on this idea that the Hindu society stood separately away from the Muslim society, and the Muslim society had nothing to do with Hindu society except when they fought or perhaps sometimes peacefully coexisted. This was far from the case, and you have to you cannot simply assume this sense of religious community always existing coherently and distinctly from each other, internally coherent and externally distinct. That's not the case. Okay, so in other words, even in terms of what they call cultural history, actually the way in which the syllabus envisages these relations is hugely problematic and not borne out by any research, including the research that the reading list contained in this syllabus actually can offer. As a professional historian and teacher, I would like to request all academicians to take a good look at this syllabus. There's always something to be learned from any written word, any written text. If only this might turn out to be an exercise in learning how not to make a syllabus.